then, yeah, we're gonna explore a little bit more about emptiness this time. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna talk about two very precious kind of aspects of Nagarjuna's practical instructions or philosophy, so to say, right? So chapter 18, which is very bit instruction on emptiness, and then in praise of the Vajra mind, which is basically a very inspiring text on the ultimate nature of the mind. Yeah.
Y vamos a estar estudiando dos aspectos muy preciosos, muy bonitos de las enseñanzas de Nagarjuna, de su filosofía. Primero vamos a ver el capítulo número 18 de los versos raíces de sabiduría, o la sabiduría fundamental. Y luego vamos a estar también estudiando este texto sobre la mente Vajra, que habla de la naturaleza primordial de la mente.
So those two texts, without the motivation of bodhicitta, of course, it will never produce the kind of real result it can produce, right? So eliminating all afflictions for self and others, or progressing on the stage of the path to enlightenment, so to say. So that's why it's very important in the beginning to generate the correct motivation, right? So try to generate a motivation that you hear in order to, eliminate not only suffering of yourself, but progress on the spiritual path all the way up to enlightenment for the benefit of those who are in need, for those who are bound by karma and afflictions, to help and rescue them.
Si escuchamos estas enseñanzas, las enseñanzas de estos dos textos, sin una motivación de bodhicitta, no desarrollaremos el resultado deseado. El resultado deseado es eliminar nuestras aflicciones tanto por nuestro propio beneficio como por el beneficio de los demás. Y no solamente eso, sino ir recorriendo todas las etapas del camino hasta llegar a la iluminación. Por eso es tan importante tratar de generar una buena motivación al comienzo de estas enseñanzas, una motivación correcta. Y esa motivación ha de ser la de escuchar estas enseñanzas para eliminar no solamente el sufrimiento, sino también para poder recorrer todas estas etapas del camino, llegar a la iluminación y así poder beneficiar a todos los seres, a todas las personas que lo necesitan, que están ahora mismo atadas por su propio karma y sufrimiento, por su propio, perdón, karma y aflicciones.
So first, yeah, before we start, try to generate correct motivation for that purpose.
Se ha congelado, me parece, ¿no? Gisela?
Sorry. Yeah, just try to generate correct motivation for that purpose of enlightenment, yeah, for yourself.
Así que con ese propósito en mente vamos a tratar de generar esta motivación.
All right. Yeah. So thank you. Do we have to say anything else? Otherwise, we can go to the prayers.
Yes, Geshe, I'll just mention about the translation part so they know about it, and then we can start.
And the translation will be simultaneous again, like last time?
It will be simultaneous. So what we thought is that after your refuge prayer, we will activate the simultaneous interpretation, if that's okay for you.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Entonces, un mensajito, un anuncio antes de comenzar las enseñanzas. Ahora mismo Geshe vamos a empezar a hacer la recitación de las oraciones. Geshe las leerá en inglés, silenciaré el micro, yo las leeré en castellano y podéis leer las oraciones conmigo a la vez, con los micros apagados, si no sería un lío. Y cuando terminemos todas las oraciones, Geshe la guiará al refugio y después de la oración de refugio, Eva activará la traducción simultánea, la interpretación simultánea y podéis elegir el canal. Si queréis escuchar la interpretación en castellano, le dais a español. Si queréis escuchar versión original, le dais a inglés. Pero eso sucederá solamente después del refugio. Ok, Gisela.
Then, yeah, before we start with the prayers, and also think in front of yourself. It's Sakyamuni Buddha, surrounded by the masters of India, Tibet, and the other Buddhist traditions, and in particular, the 70 pandits. Try to visualize them in front or imagine they there, right? And then especially Arya Nagarjuna, all the way up to His Holiness Dalai Lama. And think that it's all in front of yourself, surrounding yourself, countless sentient beings, and on the going, bound by karma and affliction, ongoing different types of suffering, unwanted, And it's up to us to help them, right? We have an uncommon karmic connection with many of them, so it's kind of responsibility for us to do something and take that into account, contemplate on that, and remember your motivation, and then in front of that assembly we recite the prayers together.
Antes de comenzar a recitar estas oraciones, vamos a hacer la siguiente visualización. Vamos a imaginar que frente a nosotras y nosotros tenemos a Buda Shakyamuni. Buda Shakyamuni está rodeado de todos los maestros, tanto de India como del Tíbet. A su vez, está rodeado de los 17 panditas. Imaginamos esto, tratamos de sentir su presencia frente a todos y todas nosotras. Especialmente vemos a Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna también está ahí en el campo de mérito. Y vemos todo el linaje de maestro desde Nagarjuna hasta el propio Dalai Lama, hasta su santidad el Dalai Lama. También nos rodean todos los seres sintientes incontables que están atados por su propio karma y aflicciones y que están experimentando todo tipo de sufrimientos. Es nuestra responsabilidad ayudar a todos esos seres porque tenemos una conexión kármica particular con muchos de los seres que están aquí, muchos de los seres que existen, por lo tanto, es nuestra responsabilidad ayudar a todos esos seres. Así que recordando nuestra motivación inicial, vamos a recitar estas oraciones.
Yeah, so then we can share the prayers together. Then you can read in Spanish, and then I will maybe we just mute. Then we just read in English. Yeah.
Eva, ya puedes poner las oraciones, que ella las leerá en inglés y las vamos a leer aquí en castellano. Bien. Alabanza a Buda Shakyamuni. Fundador, dotado, destructor, trascendental, que ha sido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimiento y en buena conducta, Sugata, conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subjugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor, trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Sakyas. Ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Fundador, dotado, destructor trascendental, que has ido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimiento y en buena conducta, Sugata, conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subyugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Sakyas. Ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Fundador, dotado, destructor trascendental, que has ido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimiento y en buena conducta, Sugata, conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subyugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Sakyas. Ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Cuando, oh supremo entre los humanos, naciste en esta tierra, diste 7 pasos y después dijiste, soy supremo en este mundo. Ante ti, que ya entonces eras sabio, me postro. Con cuerpos puros, forma supremamente pura, océano de sabiduría, como una montaña dorada, fama que resplandece en los 3 mundos, vencedor de los mejores, Señor, ante ti me postro. Con los signos supremos, un rostro como la luna inmaculada, del color del oro, ante ti me postro. Eres impoluto mientras que los 3 mundos no lo son, incomparablemente sabio, ante ti me postro. Salvador de gran compasión, fundador que atesoras todo el conocimiento, campo de mérito con cualidades como un vasto océano, ante ti, que has sido la talidad, me postro. Pureza que libera del apego, virtud que libera de los reinos inferiores, único camino, sublime realidad pura, ante el Dharma que apacigua, me postro. Ante vosotros, liberados y conocedores del camino a la liberación, campo sagrado cualificado con logros dedicados a los preceptos morales, comunidad sublime cuya meta es la virtud, me postro. Homenaje al Buda Supremo, homenaje al refugio del Dharma, homenaje a la gran Sangha, a los 3, homenaje siempre devota. A todos los dignos de respeto, inclinándome con tantos cuerpos como átomos tienen todos los reinos, en todos sus aspectos, con fe suprema, rindo homenaje. No cometas ninguna acción negativa, realiza solo acciones virtuosas perfectas, subyuga tu mente completamente. Esta es la enseñanza de Buda. Como una estrella, una aberración visual, la llama de una lámpara, una ilusión, una gota de rocío, una burbuja, un sueño, un relámpago, una nube, considera así todos los fenómenos condicionados. Que por estos méritos alcance el estado de omnisciencia, subyuga al enemigo, los defectos y libera a los seres del océano del samsara, donde están atormentados por las olas del envejecimiento, la enfermedad y la muerte. Sutra del corazón de la perfección de la sabiduría. Me postro ante la triple joya aria. Así hay una vez. El Bhagavan estaba en la montaña llamada Pico del Buitre en Rayagrija, acompañado de una gran asamblea de monjes y de bodhisattvas. En aquella ocasión, el Bhagavan estaba absorto en la concentración sobre las categorías de los fenómenos llamada percepción de lo profundo. Al mismo tiempo, también el Arya Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, consideraba la práctica de la profunda perfección de la sabiduría y percibía los 5 agregados también vacíos de existencia inherente. Entonces, por el poder de Buda, el venerable Shariputra preguntó al Arya Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, ¿cómo debería adiestrarse un hijo de buen linaje que desea practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría? Así dijo, y el Arya Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, respondió al venerable Sharavatipura con estas palabras. Shariputra, cualquier hijo o hija de buen linaje que desee practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría deberá contemplarla así, considerando repetidamente y de modo correcto estos 5 agregados como también vacíos de naturaleza inherente. La forma es vacuidad, la vacuidad es forma. La vacuidad no es más que forma, la forma no es más que vacuidad. Del mismo modo, la sensación, la discriminación, los factores de composición y la conciencia son vacíos. Shariputra, asimismo, todos los fenómenos son vacíos, sin características. No son producidos ni destruidos, no son impuros ni libres de impureza, ni deficientes ni completos. Por eso, Shariputra, en la vacuidad no hay forma, ni sensación, ni discriminación, ni factores de composición, ni conciencia. No hay ojo, ni oído, ni nariz, ni lengua, ni cuerpo, ni mente. No hay forma visible, ni sonido, ni olor, ni sabor, ni objeto del tacto, ni fenómeno. No hay elemento del ojo y hasta no haber elemento de la mente, ni elemento de la conciencia mental. No hay ignorancia ni extinción de la ignorancia, etc., hasta no haber envejecimiento ni muerte ni extinción del envejecimiento y de la muerte. Asimismo, no hay sufrimiento, ni origen, ni cesación, ni camino. No hay sabiduría suprema, ni logro, ni tampoco ausencia de logro. Así pues, Shariputra, como no hay logro, los bodhisattvas confían en la perfección de la sabiduría, la mente sin oscurecimientos ni miedo y moran en ella. Así transcienden los errores y alcanzan la meta del nirvana. También todos los budas de los 3 tiempos, de modo manifiesto y completo, despiertan a la insuperable, perfecta y completa iluminación, basándose en la perfección de la sabiduría. Por eso el mantra de la perfección de la sabiduría, el mantra del gran conocimiento, el mantra insuperable, el mantra igual a lo inigualable, el mantra que pacifica por completo todo el sufrimiento, debe ser reconocido como la verdad porque no es falso. Este es el mantra de la perfección de la sabiduría. Tayada Om Gate para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, así debe adiestrarse en la profunda perfección de la sabiduría el Bodhisattva Mahasattva. En ese momento el Bhagavan emergió de la concentración y alabó al Arya Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, con estas palabras. Bien dicho, hijo del linaje. Así es, así es. La profunda perfección de la sabiduría debe ser practicada tal como has indicado. Incluso los Tathagatas se alegran. Después de que el Bhagavan hubo dicho esto, el venerable Sharavatipura, el Arya Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva y toda la asamblea, junto con el mundo de los dioses, humanos, asuras y gandharvas, se llenaron de júbilo y alabaron las palabras del Bhagavan. El fundamento de todas las buenas cualidades. El fundamento de todas las buenas cualidades es el Maestro bondadoso, perfecto y puro. La correcta devoción hacia Él es la raíz del camino. Al ver esto claramente y aplicar gran esfuerzo, te ruego que me bendigas para confiar en Él con gran respeto. Al comprender que la preciosa libertad de este renacimiento solo se encuentra una vez, que es altamente significativa y difícil de encontrar de nuevo, te ruego que me bendigas para que genere la mente que sin cesar, día y noche, toma su esencia. Esta vida es tan transitoria como una burbuja de agua, recordando cuán rápidamente decae y llega la muerte, y que después de la muerte, como la sombra sigue al cuerpo, siguen los resultados del karma blanco y negro. Al hallar una convicción firme y definitiva en esto, te ruego que me bendigas para que siempre ponga cuidado en abandonar incluso la más pequeña de las negatividades y a llevar a cabo todas las acciones virtuosas. Buscar placeres samsáricos, la puerta a todo el sufrimiento. Son inciertos y no se puede confiar en ellos. Al reconocer estos defectos, te ruego que me bendigas para que genere la fuerte aspiración por el gozo de la liberación. Guiada por este pensamiento puro, surge la atención, la alerta y una gran cautela. La raíz de las enseñanzas es mantener los votos de la liberación individual. Te ruego que me bendigas para que lleve a cabo esta práctica esencial. Tal como yo he caído en el océano del samsara, así han caído todos los seres errantes, mis madres. Te ruego que me bendigas para que vea esto, para que me adiestre en la suprema bodhisattva y para que asuma la responsabilidad de liberar a los seres errantes. Si solo desarrollo la bodhisattva pero no practico los 3 tipos de moralidad, no alcanzaré la iluminación. Al reconocer todo esto con claridad, te ruego que me bendigas para que practique los votos del bodhisattva con gran energía. Una vez que haya apaciguado las distracciones hacia los objetos erróneos y haya analizado correctamente el significado de la realidad, te ruego que me bendigas para que genere en mi mente sin demora el camino unificado de la calma mental y la visión superior. Habiéndome convertido en un recipiente puro al adiestrarme en el camino general, te ruego que me bendigas para que entre por la puerta sagrada de las afortunadas, el supremo vehículo Vajra. En ese momento, la base para conseguir los 2 logros es mantener puros los votos y el samaya. Al convencerme firmemente de esto, te ruego que me bendigas para que proteja estos votos y compromisos como a mi vida. Así pues, al haber comprendido la importancia de los 2 estadios, la esencia del Vajrayana, y practicar con gran energía sin abandonar el yoga supremo de las 4 sesiones, te ruego que me bendigas para que practique correctamente las palabras del Sagrado Maestro. Asimismo, que los maestros que muestran el noble camino y los amigos espirituales que lo practican gocen de una larga vida. Te ruego que me bendigas para que apacigüe por completo todos los obstáculos externos e internos. Mis vidas sin separarme nunca de maestros perfectos, disfrute del magnífico Dharma, completar las cualidades de los estadios y caminos, alcance rápidamente el estado de Vajradhara. Ofrecimiento de mandala corto. Esta base, ungida con perfume, cubierta de flores, nada con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna. La imagino como un campo de Buda y la ofrezco, que todos los seres disfruten de esta tierra pura. Oh Lama puro, sagrado y perfecto, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría del Dharmakaya, te ruego que derrames una lluvia de Dharma vasto y profundo, exactamente de acuerdo con las necesidades de los que deben ser adiestrados. Ye Dhamma Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
Sangye Jodang Soni Sonam La Janjo Vadu Dani Gyasu Ji Dagi Jiso Gibe Sona Dola Penje Sangye Droba Jo Sangye Jodang Soni Sonam Janjo Vadu Dani Gyasu Ji Dagi Jiso Gibe Sona Dola Penje Sangye Droba Jo Sangye Jodang Soni Sonam Janjo Bado Dani Gyazo Ji Dagi Jijo Gibe Son. Rola Penshi Sangye Doba Jo. Jun Chuten To Kangi Tujin Nizuki Tawa Tamchi Bamushin Tamchi Jijin Tundapa. Gotan de la Chatse. So today maybe start with a quotation of the BODISATVACHARYAVATARA. Yeah, of the great Bodhisattva Shivala or Shantideva. And there's many chapters, as you know, in the Bodhisattvacharyavatāra. And in chapter 9, it talks about emptiness, right? And in this chapter 9, emptiness has been very detailed, being explained. But the first verse, so to say, of that chapter is very inspiring, because it talks about the essential reason why the Buddha taught emptiness. And that's for us quite important to know. Yeah. So that verse that reads that, you know, the first line of that verse is kind of that all these branches of the doctrine, right? So that means that all the different teachings of the Buddha, all the different, aspects of the teachings, the general and then the specific individual kind of aspects, all the branches of the doctrine, it says, all these branches of the doctrine, the powerful Lord, right? The Buddha, the powerful Lord, expounded for the sake of wisdom. That means that the Buddha taught all the teachings for the purpose of understanding and realizing emptiness. Yeah, so all the teachings of the Buddha were meant to prepare the individual disciples for, the realization eventually of emptiness. So that seems to be quite important, emptiness. So for the sake of wisdom. Therefore, it says then, they must generate this wisdom. Yeah. So therefore, the followers of the Buddha must generate the wisdom, realizing emptiness. Yeah. And why? Because it says, the last line, it says, who wish to have an end of suffering. Yeah. So there's a very nice summary of the teaching of the Buddha. That the Buddha was, if you study the life of the Buddha, it's very interesting, especially previous lifetimes, how the Buddha actually went through so much hardship for the purpose of eliminating suffering, for the purpose of helping us and all sentient beings to see what is suffering and what is the cause of suffering, and can I eliminate that cause, and if so, how, right? So as we know, the Four Noble Truths of the truth of suffering, the true cause of suffering, the true cessation, and the true paths, right? So that means that the Buddha prepared all, individual, people who are inspired by the Buddha for these Four Noble Truths, right? First, we have to recognize what is the problem, and then we have to see what is the cause of the problem, and then we have to see if it's possible to solve the problem, and then we have to see, how to solve it. Yeah, so that's quite essential. Yeah, without seeing the problem, then you will never question how does it come about. And if you don't question how does it come about, you will never ask the question, can I prevent it from coming? Yeah. If you don't ask the question, can I prevent it from coming, you will never ask the question, how do I do that? Yeah, so the Buddha are very skillful. Mostly when we have problems in our life, we often try to avoid the problem, or not think about the problem. Yeah, so that's not really solving things. That's just a temporary escape. Yeah, so we can escape one particular problem, walk in another direction, and another problem comes. And then we avoid, walk in another direction, and another problem comes. So that means we cannot avoid problems in life. Yeah, if you just try to go, you fed up in Spain from the paella and the weather, and then so you want to come to the UK, and then you have this kind of chips, this kind of deep fried kind of potatoes, and then you have overcast. So then that's not a problem. Then you want to go back. So there's no really solving of the problem if you don't face it, right? The escape doesn't really help. So that's why the Buddha said, check what is the problem, analyze it, how it's being caused, and is it possible to eliminate the problem? If it's not possible to eliminate the problem, then we might as well just hang out on the beach as long as we can and try to have fun. Yeah, but luckily the problems, they can be eliminated, right? So that's what the Buddha said, and there's a method for that. So the main method is to end suffering is to eliminate ignorance by the power of wisdom, realizing emptiness. Yeah. So that's what it says here in the last line, who wish to have an end of suffering. So this last line has 2 points, right? The suffering of oneself and the suffering of others. Yeah, we all have the same wish, not wanting suffering and wanting happiness. Yeah, so that exists in us day and night. If you're Spanish, if you, if you're British, if you're Dutch, if you, whatever country you come from, or Asian or African, wherever you come from, we have this innate wish, right? Of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. That's universal. There is no kind of, person who doesn't have that wish. And day and night, even in our dreams, we have a wish to be happy, right? When you have a dream and you have a happy dream, you wake up and you want to go back to sleep. Yeah. So sometimes you wake up, but then you cannot go back to sleep because you have to go to work or something like that. So, but we have this, oh, nice, and we want to stay in that, right? And when we have a bad dream, then we want to get rid of it as soon as possible, even when we are asleep still, right? So we have this innate wish of wanting a happy mind and not wanting problems. Yeah? So that is for all of us exactly the same. Whatever background or whatever religion you come from, whatever culture you're from, whatever country you're born, that's a universal kind of aspect of what we all share, right? That we want happiness and don't want suffering. But then the question is, how do you create happiness and how do you eliminate suffering, right? So that's when we come to these Four Noble Truths of understanding the problem, understanding suffering, see how it's been caused, and then see its problem to eliminate it, and see how you do that. Yeah, so there's kind of a very kind of systematic structure of the Buddhist teaching. Yeah. So that means that we have suffering, we have physical suffering, we have mental suffering. Yeah. So the most difficult aspect is our mental stages. Yeah. If you're mentally very strong and physically you have some suffering, it's much easier to deal with it because mentally you're strong. Yeah. On the other hand, if you physically strong, but mentally it's difficult, then it's much more difficult to deal with it. Yeah, that's why the Buddha was mainly concerned about how we actually mentally change. And on the long term, it will prevent physical suffering as well. Yeah, if you talk about the law of karma, for example. Yeah. So then the Buddha said, okay, we have these types of suffering created by these kind of destructive emotions like anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, anxiety, fear, in modern times, depression. So there's a lot of kind of different destructive emotions, so to say, we have that causes us trouble. Yeah, and that causes our minds to be unhappy. That causes us to do something to somebody else. We say something wrong to another person, and it causes suffering of others as well. And so these, what we call afflictions or destructive emotions, so to say, yeah, they disturb our mind and they disturb our behavior. And so that's kind of a direct cause of suffering. Yeah, these kind of destructive emotions of anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and anxiety, fear, depression. Yeah. So then, as we recognize it, it's good to recognize that, and then see, okay, this is the problem. So if you say, okay, this is the problem, that's not enough, right? It's good to recognize, because most people, they don't recognize it. They just go on with life and don't even know if they are suffering or if they're happy, or can they achieve more happiness. And that's the majority of the people on this planet. They just run and run and run and run and run and run to different directions, looking for happiness, but not really knowing they're looking for happiness, right? Yeah. And then you keep running, and then, yeah, you get exhausted and you don't achieve anything. So that's kind of a thing we like to avoid. Yeah? So we have to recognize these types of suffering. So they are caused by this disturbance of mind, right? Excessive anger, disturbs your mind, and then you say something wrong, and it can cause a whole relationship to break down, right? This kind of innate anger, or aversion. Yeah. And same with excessive desire. I need this, I need that, right? And that also disturbs our mind. And when we accomplish or when we obtain the object of desire, it's not that that's the perfect life. We see that, we see that everywhere. People who are extremely rich and who's very famous, it's not really a cause for happiness, right? Happiness is not really out there. And that's quite easy to recognize, right? Even for children, it's easy to recognize. Just like when the lockdown finished a little bit, then in summer, I went to give a talk at a summer youth camp of Tibetan children. Yeah, so you cannot talk about hardcore philosophy with children, right? So you have to be a little bit more kind of skillful. So then I asked the children in the beginning, okay, so what do you think is happiness? Is it outside or is it inside, or where is it? What is happiness? You know, and even children, they come to a conclusion that it's not only outside, right? So that means that the external aspects of life or possessions we have, fame, wealth, we can see the more wealth you have, you crave for more, right? You see that. People who have thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros, keep it in euro, okay? 100,000 of euros, then they want to have more. They want to have millions and millions, they want to have billions. And then they have billions, and guess what they do? They don't not just enjoy their life and try to have fun and, you know, stay and go for holidays and you know, relax a little bit. No. They want to go to space. They want to travel for 10 minutes, spend a few 100,000. Yeah, what is it? Yeah, maybe a first ticket was maybe 100, I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000 or something like that. Like $250,000 for 10 minutes into space. And then you put all this gear on, and then you go up and you come down. It's very tiring, probably. And then you have this 10 minutes kind of 10 minutes kind of in space experience. When you come back, they all smile, but inside, I wonder if they were really happy. They come out and they, ooh, look at me, you know. But when they go back home, they're probably exactly the same as before they went to space, right? It's not really, you know, it's true, right? If that's space travel would make you extremely happy, the Buddha already told you that you go into space and then forget everything else. So you see, the more money you have, the more things you want to explore because there's no satisfaction, right? That's what it is. Excessive desire thinks, oh, if I have this, I will be so happy. If I have that, I will be so happy, right? So the objects of desire, right? The more you have those objects, the more you engage in the activities of desire, is not you become happier and happier and happier and happier, right? It's quite easy to recognize. Yeah, it's okay to enjoy life, but you should know that it's not an ultimate form of happiness, right? So as long as you know that, then there's no mistakes being made, right? You don't fool yourself. Yeah, because otherwise it becomes like drinking salty water, right? You expect too much, and then that the reality is not met, and then there's no satisfaction. That's what it means, right? You think, if I have this, that will be so amazing. Then you generate this kind of conceptual thoughts and conceptual pattern of you know, and you build up a mental image. For those who did the course on mind and mental factors last, where was it? In summer, right? In spring, actually. Yeah, beginning of the year. Then, you know, we talked about these points of conceptual consciousness, which generates these mental images of aspects of reality, which is not really out there, but just mentally created. Yeah? So you expect, if I have this object, then you think, oh, then we're so happy and this will happen. And oh. So you create a kind of reality in your mind, which is not out there. Yeah, or when you order your paella or pizza or whatever online and comes, you have these expectations. Oh, wow, if I have this one, I'd be so happy, you know. But then it arrives and it's not according to expectation, or you order something else online when you think, oh, if I have this, that's so amazing. And then it arrives and then it's not really according to your expectation, right? So that means, yeah, your expectation is not met, and then you don't get any satisfaction. Yeah. So that's, yeah, pretty obvious, right? Those kind of aspects. But to really understand it, there's not many people who have examined these things. We talk about it, even movie stars and music kind of, you know, singers and pop groups. Probably in Spain, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the Spanish songs. I'm a little bit familiar with Spanish people, but not really with the song. So, but you probably have very similar songs, like, you know, I can get no satisfaction, right? Yeah, I haven't found what I'm looking for. Yeah, so there's kind of songs, even pop groups, they sing those songs. They don't really understand actually the real meaning behind it, but at least they have a little sense that what is out there is not really the cause for happiness. Yeah? So that means that these destructive emotions, and anger is very obvious, right? That it destroys our mind and it destroys our peace of mind, and we react to another person, we destroy a relationship or a good relation, or you know, we harm others by verbal abuse or whatsoever. So that's pretty obvious to recognize, right? So then, but the Buddha said, okay, these destructive emotions like anger and excessive desire, for example, they are the direct cause for suffering. You see, a direct cause. They directly cause suffering. But underneath that, there's a kind of root cause for that to come about. And that is what we call ignorance, right? This I, apprehension of an I and mine, or an apprehension of a self, or self-deceptive thought, or self-identity. Yeah, so when you get angry, you always think, how dare this person say this to me? I'm not like this. I don't make any mistakes. Mistakes are always made by others, you know, and you want to protect this I, you know? Yeah, so it's very obvious, you know, when you get angry. Yeah, I think last time, I don't know if you asked you that kind of very simple technique, you know, if I ask you all in 3 seconds, you know, I count to 3 and then please get angry. Okay, do that. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3, get angry, everybody. Come on, 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah. So then for quite a few of you is probably, I don't know, unless you're extremely uptight, but for probably the majority of you, it's quite difficult to generate anger like that. Yeah. But if I look at you or the screen and say, oh, look at your hairdress, or look at the glasses you're wearing, or the headphone set you have, or what you have in your room, you know, it's terrible, you know? If I talk like that, then you think, what? How dare Tenzin Namdak say this to me? I am not like this, you know? So how dare he say this to me? I am not like this, right? So then the I comes up, and then we generate anger very easily. You know, so that proves that anger is rooted in a concept of I, right? Yeah. In a similar way, excessive desire and attachment is also rooted in I need this and my objects. Yeah, so that's kind of what the Buddha also came to the conclusion, that it's all rooted in a concept of I and mine. Yeah. Those who studied before, when we went into mind and mental factors, then we talked about one mental factor, which is classified as the view of the transitory collection, right? So the view of the transitory collection, that's actually a very important affliction to be understood. Yeah? So what does that do, this view? What is that, the view of the transitory collection? Is a kind of, you know, a state of mind, a view that things exist in a particular way, right? That's why it's called a view, you know? A view of the transitory collection, that means what is transitory, what is momentary changing of the body and mind, right? So the body and mind are momentary changing, you know? They change moment by moment, split second by split second, right? Even the cells, they change, yeah? So, but we don't see that with our eyes. We still think there's a kind of an I there on top of these body and mind. Yeah, so we have a body that's momentarily changing, we have a mind that's momentarily changing, and then we think, oh, there's an I on top of these, on top of this collection. Yeah, and then that I we want to protect, or we call that the kind of self-identity that we want to protect, right? So based on that I we also have a possessive aspect. We say my computer, my body, my mind. Yeah, so there's 2 aspects there. There's I and mine. Yeah, so there's 2 aspects of the view of the transitory collection, I and mine. They are related, yeah, with each other. Yeah, and it's very interesting to understand for those who have studied a little bit more that in order to get liberated, you have to eliminate this ignorance of the view of the transitory collection, because we have to eliminate afflictions. We have to eliminate these destructive emotions. And these destructive emotions are rooted in this view of the transitory collection, because we say, I need this, I need that. How dare this person say this to me, right? And then we refer to objects as, how dare this person to harm my body, you know? How dare this person to do this to my kind of environment? How dare this person do this to my car or my computer or my laptop, you know? So we relate to things as I and a possessive aspect of mine. Yeah, so that refers to, for those who have studied a bit more, to the self of a person and the self of phenomena, right? That means that the self of the person is this kind of I on top, or we try to see or like to see this I on top of the aggregates, right? On top of the body and mind, exists all by itself without dependence, you know? And then this fuels all the destructive emotions. Yeah? And then in relation to that, we have this possessive aspect of mind. Yeah? So I and mine are two aspects of the view of the transitory collection. Yeah. So the real definition of the view of the transitory collection, if you did you memorize that or not? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, last time is probably gone in summer. You go to Spain, you go. Yeah, there's not that much to go, but now things open up, so you maybe go, and then when you come back, it's gone, right? Yeah. So yeah, maybe it's gone. Yeah. So that means that the view of transitory collection is a view, a mind misunderstanding reality that thinks that, technically speaking, it's a mind that looks or focuses upon the body and mind, and then think on top of that is, you know, there is an I and a mind existing inherently, you know. So, and it happens, you know, when we get angry or when we get excessive desire or when you're close to death, for example. I don't know, in Spain there's no sharks, right? In the sea, no? I mean, not danger sharks, I think, no? No, so otherwise, yeah, you can be like freaking out. You're in summer, the beach. I remember the first time, I think I told you a story last time, I'm not sure. The first time I came to Spain in my life, I was probably in my late teens. We were hitchhiking, and I went to Saint Sebastian. You know, that's on the West Coast, no? Yeah, on the West Coast, yeah. Saint Sebastian, it's a very famous place, I think, yeah. It still is, I suppose. Yeah. So that was my first introduction to Spain, okay? And then we went to this beach, and then there was kind of nobody swimming. We thought, why is nobody swimming here? It's a beautiful beach and beautiful, beautiful, you know, beautiful sea. So let's go. So we went swimming, but actually we almost died in the process, because there was kind of, you know, very strong currents that took our legs away. Yeah, so luckily I was capable of coming up top of a wave. I'm not a very good swimmer, first of all, but luckily I got on top of a wave. Otherwise, that was my life, you know. But I remember that time was very strong sense of I, you know, or when you have an accident, almost you die in a car accident, or you can imagine you on a big ship, you know, in a big ship, and then you fall off the ship. And the ship doesn't, people on the ship don't know you fall off, right? So you're just there in the middle of the ocean, you know? And you know you're gonna die out of fatigue, right? You cannot survive for a long period of time in the middle of an ocean. So then I comes, you know? Or when you're on top of a building and you're almost falling off, or in a plane with turbulence, or the engines, they stop. You know, you can imagine that, right? Yeah. Then there's a kind of strong sense of I you want to protect. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here. That recognizes is quite important in order to really see what is causing all these destructive emotions. Yeah. So that's quite important to recognize. And that's throughout to, it's not only a Buddhist thing, also in forms of psychology or in different forms of science, they come to similar conclusions, right? Yeah, so that meaning that the self-deceptive thought, one famous physicist, David Bohm, also came to the conclusion that's a cause for suffering, in the sense that the self-deceptive thought is a cause for wanting power, wanting money, wanting security, right? It even causes a problem in society, if you think us and them, for example. Yeah, so he came to the same conclusion. This I is a cause for problems. And also you saw, and he said that a very concrete I like that doesn't really exist. It's just a show, he says. But a very convincing show, and that's why we take it as an apparent reality. That's his conclusion. That's a scientist, right? A physicist, you know. It's very interesting that they come to a conclusion there is no concrete I to be found, you know. And in a similar way, out there, the objects appear very concrete out there when you look at your screen, right, in your computer. It looks there completely separate from your mind, you know. It's just all by itself. That's how it appears. But actually, objects don't exist in that way, you know. Yeah, things are what we call just merely imputed upon, you know, on the collection of certain parts, you know. Yeah, so that's also that in science. Carlo Rovelli, one Italian famous kind of scientist in the field of quantum gravity. So Carlo Rovelli, he also is a very interesting personality. And why is it so interesting? Because Carlo Rovelli, I don't know, probably his book is translated in Spanish, I'm not sure. There's one book, his newest book is called Helgoland. So I don't know if the title remains probably the same in Spain. And this Helgoland is a kind of an island, the name of an island in the north of England. Yeah, it has to do with previous scientists who were there and contemplating the nature of reality. So Carlo Rovelli is a very interesting personality. Why? Because he wrote kind of international bestsellers, translated in 40 or 50 different languages. So I suppose also in Spanish. Yeah. So this Carlo Rovelli person is a very interesting person because he studied also a lot of philosophy, right? And then he mentioned in his own book, and also I met with him online recently, and we're going to have a dialogue with him as well soon. And he told me that Nagarjuna, right, the text we're studying, that, you know, he said he was very, very impressed by the way of logic and reasoning Nagarjuna put forward in order to understand the ultimate level of reality, you know? Yeah, so there's a quantum physicist who was impressed by a philosopher like Arya Nagarjuna, right? So it's very interesting that the Buddha 2,500 years ago talked about these issues, and now we see, you know, big names in science come to similar conclusions and appreciate this kind of logic of philosophy. It's very interesting, you know. And also in the forms of psychology, same thing, you know, when His Holiness met with a psychologist and the patient was depressed, and then His Holiness asked, what? Why are you depressed? His Holiness sometimes is very direct, not that, oh yeah, sorry to hear that. No, His Holiness said, why are you depressed? Yeah. And then this lady said, you know, said a few things, and then he said, who is depressed? And then this lady said, I am depressed. And then His Holiness asked her, where is this I? And then she said, here is the I, you know? Then His Holiness said, is it square, or is it you know, rectangle, or is it circular, you know? And then she didn't really answer. And then His Holiness said, okay, you close your eyes and you move this eye from the left to the right. Okay? So she closed her eyes, and then she said, oh, and she laughed a little bit. She said, oh, it's not there. It's very interesting, right? That if you look for this I, you can actually not find it, you know. So, but it causes all these problems because we think it's there. That's the problem. You know, and there's many examples like that. Eckhart Tolle, I just heard about him recently, right? Yeah. So I did some research about his talks. It's very interesting. He also had a lot of suffering in life, very, very difficult period in life. He was really depressed, deeply depressed, and very, very down, and very, the mind was not in a good place, so to say, you know. So then one day he said, "Oh, I've enough of myself," he said, you know, "I've enough of myself." So then he said, "I've enough of myself," and then he said, "Oh, who is this I and who is this myself?" Right? So then he started thinking, who is this I and who is myself? You know? And then he was thinking, and then he fell asleep, and then he woke up the next day, and he was so peaceful. And his mind was like so peaceful he never experienced before. And I remembered this idea of, you know, where is this I? Is this self there really there? You know, very interesting. So he got a kind of insight in an aspect that previously caused him to cause him suffer. And then he saw, you know, it's actually much more peaceful if you don't think about it. Yeah, so it's a very interesting example. Yeah, so there's many examples. Also, scientific research has been done regarding the experience of a self-deceptive thought or self-identity that causes depression, low self-esteem, you know, and all these kind of emotions. People with a more or a stronger self-identity, it seems like they have more difficulty emotionally. They're much more suffering emotionally. So if you talk with people who have a very strong concept of I, then you see the same thing sometimes. It's very difficult to talk with those people. Yeah, there's very strong emotions. Yeah. So that comes down that from the Buddhist perspective, as well as from other angles of science or whatever you want to examine it, there is a kind of concept of I am mine that is there, that causes all these destructive emotions to come about, you know? Yeah, and then the Buddha said, okay, if you really want to do something about your problems, then you have to get rid of this I, you know? Yeah. So that's why we're here. Yeah, that's why, yeah, I cannot come to Spain, but yeah, it would be a bit too much to come for an evening. But yeah, I've always recall, I have great memories of Spain. Yeah, of my first trip, and then my second trip to Uzerling. That was this, what is it, two years ago, I think, before lockdown, 2019. Yeah, so I enjoy a lot. South Spain, a little bit, was a bit, I was a bit surprised there was not many trees, but it was a bit hot, but very nice area. And then we went to the beach. And the first time I went to the beach since, what is it, 25 or 30 years, something like that. We had paella on the beach. Yeah. Maria, she was a kind of volunteer who helped. We came together all the way up to Uzerling. Yeah, so yeah, we drove and then had some paella on the beach, because actually I never had paella, I think, in my life until then. Yeah, yeah. So that was first experience with the Spanish people. Yeah, and since then I always think, okay, it's good to hang out with the Spanish because they're quite relaxed and easygoing and easy to talk to, and like a family kind of feeling, right? So it's Spanish people are quite easy to talk to. Yeah. So I'm also quite a relaxed personality, so that matches, right? Yeah. So we talk about this I, you know, that is the cause of these problems. So then the Buddha said, okay, let's do something about it, right? Yeah. And then the Buddha taught the view of emptiness, you know, meaning then, you know, what is actually the methods to eliminate this I. If you analyze it, you can actually not really find it, right? It's not really there, you know. If you check, when you're angry, don't look, because you get probably very angry at that time. So that's not the right time to look, right? So when the anger settles down, and then you know, when you relax, you see how did this I appear, you know, or excessive desire that came, or close to death, or fear for death, right? There's a very strong sense of I that might have showed itself to your mind in appearance. Yeah, so that appearance is not reality. Why is not reality? Because we cannot really find it. You know, if you just check, is it in your body? Is it in your mind? Is it different from your body? It's different from your mind. You cannot really find it, right? This is kind of this I. It appears very solid, but if you just think, where is it? Where is it? You know, you cannot really find it. You know, so that's this text is all about those points. How to understand where this I is, if it exists, and if you cannot find it, to see that actually doesn't exist the way it appears. And that's exactly what we call emptiness, right? That empty of something and empty of inherent existence. Yeah, empty of an inherent I, empty of an inherent mind. That's what we talk about emptiness, right? This emptiness means a lack of something or an absence of something. Yeah, so what an absence or what lack of inherent existence or absence of inherent existence. Yeah, so that's basically the text dealing with this. So this chapter number 18, you know, is a very precious text. It's a, you know, it's a mind-boggling precious text. Why? Because it summarizes Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom. You know, that is a quite elaborate text, but it's all summarized in this chapter 18. You know, so that's why this text is chapter 18 is very, very precious. And also Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, the founder of the Gelug tradition, as you know, he realized the emptiness for the first time by depending on reading commentaries on this particular chapter. You know, so this is very impressive to know that, and especially when Lama Tsongkhapa wrote a commentary about Buddha Palita. Yeah, so the Buddha Palita's commentary, the night before Lama Tsongkhapa realized emptiness, he had this dream that Buddha Palita put a text on top of his head, right? And then the next day, after having done a lot of purification and accumulation of merit, and studying the text and making strong prayers to the Guru, you know, one with deity. Yeah, so that seems to be quite important, you know, accumulation of merit, purifying negative deeds, studying the great texts, and praise to the Guru, right? So those 4 points seems to be quite essential, you know. And then so Lama Tsongkhapa did that for about 4 years, right? You know, he went in this retreat for about 4 years. You know, before entering the retreat, he had thousands of disciples. You know, so then when Manjushri appeared, you know, we prayed to Manjushri, but Lama Tsongkhapa could actually see Manjushri. Not on Zoom, but in reality, right? Yeah. Not like on a TV screen or something like that, but just really there, you know? So then that's quite impressive, right? And then in the early days, Lama Tsongkhapa couldn't really talk yet with Manjushri. Yeah, so Lama Umapa was a kind of a person with a very strong connection with Manjushri over many lifetimes. Yeah. So he was acting as a translator, you know. And then Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa, because Lama Tsongkhapa said, oh, he was already an incredible scholar, right, in Tibet. He was one of the biggest scholars at that time. And so he had he was in his late 20s, you know, he was very famous about a few works he wrote. And he has so many disciples, you know. But then, so he asked Manjushri, he said, do I have the view of Svatantrika, or do I have the view of Prasangika? Yeah, the two views of the middle way school, you know? And then he expected an acknowledged answer of Manjushri, but then Manjushri said, neither, you know? So then he thought, oh, what do I have to do now? And he asked Manjushri, what do I have to do now? So then Manjushri said, okay, you have to do these 4 points. You accumulate merit, purify negative deeds, right? And study the great texts of the Indian masters, in particular, Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita, Chandakirti, for example. Yeah? And make strong requests to the Guru, you know, one with the deity. And then things will happen. So then Lama Tsongkhapa thought, okay, yeah, maybe I have to do that. And then Lama Umapa stood up. I mean, I don't know if he stood up, but he interfered and said, but Manjushri, you know, look, what Lama Tsongkhapa has so many disciples, you know. What will people say if he goes to retreat? You know, they will scold me, you know, that I let him go, where he can benefit so many disciples. And then Manjushri told Lama Umapa, because Manjushri is Manjushri, right? He's a Buddha. So he told Lama Umapa, he said, what's most beneficial for the Dharma and for sentient beings, I know. What people say to you, you practice patience, you know. So there's a kind of very direct advice of Manjushri to Lama Tsongkhapa, right? Yeah. So then Lama Tsongkhapa went, and then after this 4 years, he had this dream of Buddha Palita putting the text on his head, and the next day he was contemplating actually the first verse of chapter 18. He was contemplating that, and then realized emptiness. See, so that's kind of a very precious text, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's a very precious text. Yeah. So then, the first verse is a very profound verse, because it actually talks about, you know, how, if you know how the I appears, you know, then you have to see, does it exist the way it appears, right? Because the way the I appears is causing the problem. Yeah, we have this strong sense of, I need this, I need that, or how dare this person say this to me. There's a very strong sense of I, yeah, that seems to exist inherently without dependence, right? Yeah, so that's how it appears. But the question is, does it exist the way it appears? Yeah, so that's kind of the question. Yeah, because we know everything that appears to our mind is not reality, you know, and we constantly think that what appears to the mind is reality, but it's not, you know. Even the mental images we have of people or situations, our mental fabrications, and we believe that, but actually it's just fabricated, right? Yeah, a person you get angry at, you mentally create an image that is maybe 90% false and 10% qualities of that person, while that person might have 60% qualities and 40% false. But you create this mental ID, no, this person is like this person like this, right? So you create it mentally, and then you believe that's the person, you know, and then you get angry at the person. But actually, you should get angry at the mental image, right? Because that's actually what is being created and has all these aspects you don't like. You see? So the mental image has this aspect you don't like, and then we think it's the person, that creates a problem. You see? So that's kind of a reality that is not really there, but we believe or we think it's there, you know? And many other kind of simple examples, you know, you can imagine if you go by train and on the station, and then there's movement in the eye, right? And you think, oh, are we going? But then you look at the platform, and then you see it's the other train that's going. But the moment at that time, you have this feeling, you're 100% convinced I'm going, right? So there's a wrong consciousness, but you believe it's right, you see? Or in the dream, same thing, you know? In the dream, we believe the dream is reality. And then we get out of the dream, and then we still believe it's reality. You know, we're very confused, right? So the only way to stop this wrong view is using reasoning, right? With the train example, you look at a platform and you reason, oh, because the platform is there, that implies the other train is moving, right? Yeah, so by the power of reasoning, you correct yourself, yeah, or your mind, so to say. In a similar way, when you wake up from a dream, you sit down with a glass of water, wash your face, and think, that was just a dream, nothing to worry about, it was just a dream. I'm here in my room, everything is fine. Yeah, so then you can get rid of these disturbing thoughts, you know, by the power of reasoning. So that's why we need reasoning, yeah? So then if this I appears, then we think that's reality, but we have to examine if that's reality or not, because the way it appears, right? The way it appears is causing the trouble. The way it appears is causing anger to arise, excessive desire to arise, jealousy, pride, anxiety, fear. The way it appears, that's what I or mine, and then we act, right? So the way it appears, we have to examine if it exists exactly the way it appears or not. Yeah, so that's what it is. And the first verse then gives us the reasoning to prove it cannot exist the way it appears. And that helps us to see the reality, and then this strong I will lose this potential. And because of that, then also, the related destructive emotions will lose their potential, right? If there's no strong grasping and an I, then excessive desire or strong, anger or aversion will not arise, right? Yeah. So that's very helpful, not only on the paths to enlightenment and liberation, but also for our day-to-day life. If you contemplate emptiness again and again, a few times a day, it will help to prevent strong negative emotions from coming into being. Yeah. So then, how do we do that? How do we prove that, that this I doesn't exist the way it appears? Yeah. So we have to use logic or reasoning. Same with the train example. Same with the dream. We have to use reasoning to understand the reality, right? Yeah. It doesn't come all by itself. We have to use reasoning. Yeah. And as we know, emptiness, empty of inherent existence, is a kind of, what we call a slightly hidden phenomena, as we also discussed before, for those who attended the mind and mental factors course we did before, that, this aspect of the I cannot actually really exist the way it appears, So we have to examine that with logic. And that's only possible by using a conceptual consciousness or thinking about it, because it is kind of what we call a slightly hidden phenomena. Yeah, that means a slightly hidden phenomena like emptiness, we cannot see with our eyes, we cannot hear, we cannot touch or feel or smell or taste. We have to contemplate and think, Yeah, same as with the train example, to get the right consciousness, as in the dream when you wake up, you need reasoning, right? Yeah. But then, okay, how do we do that? How do we see that the I doesn't exist the way it appears? Yeah. So that we check. Yeah. So before we go into that the first verse, there's logic, right? Yeah. You interested in logic or not? Epistemology, yeah. You saw people clapping their hands I mean, we see people clapping their hands all the time. I know that, but I mean, clapping their hands in debate, philosophical debate of the monks and the nuns, who you see clapping their hands and take their mala like this, and having fun, and at the same time, having fun, at the same time also examining aspects of reality is a very nice way to do. It's yeah, I know, probably might have seen it. It's a very exciting way of discussion, so to say. Yeah, in the West we have normal discussion sessions, but in the monastic institutions is a very is a very inspired way of using reasoning in a very profound and systematic way. Yeah? Once the BBC came to the monastery, and if you have 2,000 monks clapping their hands, you can imagine it's not really peaceful place. So they said, "Oh, it's one of the most noisiest places we've ever been." They said, "It's very interesting." Yeah, but that's one aspect. But the real aspect is that it's great fun to if you see, most people have a lot of fun. Yeah, because reasoning and analyzing things, some people is quite dry, and philosophy is dry. So then you play around and you jump, and then it's very nice. You have elbow work with your classmates. No, let me do it, or let me do it. It's great fun. So whenever I think about debate, always happiness comes somehow. Because we have had a lot of fun. Yeah. So But yeah, it's all based on reasoning, right? We need reasoning. If you just have a problem and you think, oh, I have this problem, then that will not solve it, right? You have to think about it, and you have to use reasoning to solve your problems. Yeah. So, and that's even more true with the root of all this problem is the ignorance. So we see there's an I that appears, you know, in a very concrete way, you know, very solid, without dependence. And that gives fuel to anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and all our negative thoughts. So we have to see, does this I actually exist, first of all? And we know many aspects of our mind that appear is not reality, like the dream, like the train, like the mental images we have of people or situations. It's not reality, but we think it's reality, right? So here, in a similar way, we check if this I is reality or not. And then we come to the conclusion that you will find it actually doesn't exist the way it appears, you know? So it's very funny and sad at the same time that since beginner's lifetime, we have believed this I, you know, this I is lying to us all the time. And we just believe that. We're just a bit stupid, actually, to believe that. We should now say, okay, that's enough. That's enough. You I, you ignorance, you know, that's enough. You know, the way you appear, you don't even exist. I'm going to kick you out. Yeah. So that's kind of the approach we should have. Yeah. So how do we do that? By using reasoning. So that's one reasoning in relation with the first verse, and that reason is called one with or different from. One with or different from. Yeah, that's the first reasoning. It's a very powerful one. That means that everything that exists, right, is either one with or different from your body, isn't it? The you know, just take a cup and I can drink at the same time. For example, this cup, you know, yeah, Anna can also drink, yeah. Yes, cheers. So how to say that in Spanish? Yeah, salud. So Anna can use her cup and I can use my cup. Yeah. So this cup, you know, is different from my body, right? Yeah. And this cup is one with the cup itself. Everything else in this cup is different from cup, right? The table is different from cup. The screen is different from cup, you know. The body is different from cup. The mind is different from cup. But the cup itself is one with cup, right? So in a similar way, our body is one with the body, but different from the cup and different from the table. You see? So whatever exists is either one with or different from something else, right? You see that? That's the first logic we have to get. One with and different from reasoning. Whatever exists is either one with or different from the body and mind. The table is different from the body. The table is different from the mind, right? The mind is one with the mind. The body is one with the body, but everything else is different. You know, that's the first logic, you know? So if the I appears and you recognize how it appears, you know, when you get angry or when somebody criticizes you, you know, normally when somebody criticizes us, then we get angry as well. We try to escape and try to say, oh, you're wrong. Yeah. So instead of saying you're wrong, just go quick to the toilet or something and sit there and see how did I appear. Or when a person tells you off or scolds you, you say, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, yeah. And then you walk away, okay? And then without getting angry, you walk away and check how the I appears. It's much more constructive than getting angry, you know? Yeah, if people, you know, shout at you, or if people are, you know, say something wrong to you, or you know, tell about your mistakes or whatsoever. Actually, those persons are very helpful, you know, or then you can practice patience and you can see how the I appears. That's what we're talking about here. Because the way the I appears is very difficult to recognize. Yeah, and for that purpose, we need these, you know, situations is very helpful. So next time a person gets angry at you, then you think, oh, great, you know. So when a person scolds you, points out your mistakes, you say, oh yeah, Lasso, yeah, okay, thank you, and then see how the eye appears, right? Yeah, because words by itself don't really harm, right? The words the person expresses is not harming us. It's just our reaction to those words that is harming us, right? Yeah, so that's the kind of aspect we should know. And then you see that as eye appears. Oh, you know. So that's a very precious moment to see how the eye appears, you know. And then later on, when you sit down in your room and you're quiet by yourself, you try to remember how does this eye appear, right? So you remember that. And then you try to get a clear picture, how did it appear, you know? You try to get a clear picture, how did it appear, you know? And then, without losing that picture, you start to analyze. Okay, if it exists in this way, you know, then it should be one or different from the body and mind. There's no other possibility, as we just saw, right? There's a first logical step. You see how it appears, and then you ask the question, if it exists in that way, it should be one with or different from my body, or it should be one with or different from my mind. You know, yeah. So that's the first kind of logical reason. You know, okay. So then maybe one with the body. Then you check. This eye appears very solid from its own side, without different parts or without different, you know, aspects. And the body has many parts and aspects, right? Yeah. So if it's one with the body, it should have similar aspects. Yeah, whatever is one with the body is the body itself, right? So if the eye is one with the body, then it should have similar aspects, but it just appears in a very concrete, from its own side existing way. You know, so it cannot be one with the body, so to say. Yeah, so then you think, oh, maybe it's different. Then it's the other possibility, right? So then different from the body, then is it inherently different, like a dog and a cat? Completely two different kind of beings, right? Yeah, so if it's inherently different, then why do we say my body, my leg, my arm? Yeah, so it doesn't seem to exist without dependence, completely different, you know? So then you say it is not really inherently different. Yeah, so it's not one with the body, it's not different from the body. So then you check, or maybe it's one with the mind, or different from the mind. Right? So then you check. Your mind has many moments, you know. I'm saying something, Anna is translating, you listening, you thinking about it, you know, you have an intention to write something down. So there's many types of consciousness. Your visual perception of seeing the screen, your ear listening to what's been said, right? Your mind thinking about it. So there's already 3 or 4 different types of mind that's engaged, right? So this I appears as one. It appears very solid all by itself. So if it's one with consciousness or one with the mind, then the same logic applies, right? It should have many aspects if it's one with the mind, because the mind has many aspects. But the I appears to be just all by itself without those aspects. So it cannot really be one with the mind, you know? So then you think, oh, it's not one with the mind. Then they be different from the mind. Yeah. So then you see inherently different, like a dog and a cat. Is it that kind of different? Is the I, you know, if you put your mind and your body away, is it still this I appears? But you say my feeling, my thought, my perception. So it's not inherently different, right? So if you analyze it in that way, you see, okay, where is this I? It's not in the body, it's not one with the body. If you check in your body, the different parts, you know, there's no I to be found, right? Yeah. And separate from the body, Also, there's, if you put your body away and then see if the eye still appears, also you can see it's not really there, you know? And then it's obvious to say, oh yeah, but I'm the consciousness. And then your consciousness has this process of moments, one after the other, right? So in this process of moments, is there an I to be found in all these kind of moments back and forth or not? That's the question. That's your homework, okay? You have to check. Yeah, so I'm just explaining a little bit, I'll try to, but you have to do the homework, right? You have to see, is that really the case? Is there really an I to be found like that? You know, in the body or in the mind, or separate from? Yeah, so then you come to the conclusion, actually, you cannot find it. And then some people, they get a little bit kind of, ooh, kind of freaky feeling. Because if you have something you hold on to for a long time, and then you see it's not there, it shakes the system a little bit, right? So it's nothing wrong with shaking the system, you know. But some people can be a little bit kind of, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, you know. But eventually it becomes very peaceful, because you see there is no I to worry about. There is no controller as such. There's no thing that is in charge and make mistakes, right? It's just the mere body and mind that is imputed as a person. There is no I to be found in the body or in the mind, or separate from the body, but separate from the mind. You know, so that's pure logic. You know, it's nothing to do with religion or faith. It's kind of pure kind of reality analyze. And if you come to that conclusion, there's no real concrete I, and you habituate yourself to that, then over time you see there's a conventional body, there's a conventional mind, right? Because we think, we sit, we eat, we go to the beach, right? So we do all kinds of things in life, right? So for you, yeah, you know, Spanish people, they have dinner at 9 or something, right? So it's kind of, you eat, you think, you sleep, you have siesta, you know. You have those things in life. Every moment of your day, you do different activities, right? So that means there is a kind of, there's a body and there's a mind, but there's no solid or inherent I in your body or in your mind, or separate from your body and mind. And that's what you're talking about. Then, if you have that little bit of insight, you see, oh, look at that. There's no real I to be found, you know? And that insight can be very, very helpful from the point of view of getting less intense and getting less destructive emotions. And that helps us to have a peaceful life. And then eventually, if you get a good understanding of it, then one day you can realize it. And then when you realize it, then in stages, you actually, you know, eliminate these kind of wrong understandings. And then you eliminate these afflictions. And then you go all the way up to what we call nirvana or enlightenment, right? So that's possible to change your mind all the way up. There's no kind of destructive emotions anymore. There's no suffering. Yeah, so that's why we always say, I mean, we don't always say that, but there's an aspect of the Buddhist teaching where it says, you know, means all compounded phenomena are impermanent, right? So all compounded phenomena means all impermanent phenomena are momentarily changing. Yeah, that's the first seal of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah. And then the Buddha said the second one is all contaminated phenomena, meaning contaminated by the power of karma and afflictions, right? As long as you have these kind of afflictions or destructive emotions with its related activities of mental activity, physical activity, or verbal activity in relation with these destructive emotions, that causes suffering, right? Think about anger, excessive desire, which motivates our speech, motivates our physical behavior, and influences our mind, right? So that means these destructive emotions and their actions or the activities, as we call karma and afflictions, Yeah, that is what we call contaminated. And so all contaminated phenomena are suffering, right? Yeah, there's the second kind of seal of Buddhist philosophy, you know. And then the third seal is that all phenomena are empty or selfless. That means all phenomena are empty of this I, right? So that's the solution. All phenomena are empty of an inherent I, you know. If you contemplate that well, then, you know, the seal number 4 comes, and it's the nicest one, because it says Nangla Dewa. In Tibetan it's even nicer. I don't know in Spanish. Nangla Dewa Shiva. Yeah, that means nirvana is peace. I don't know, peace is also a little bit like that in Spanish. Like speech. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 I was planning to learn a little bit of Spanish, but then I got busy with other things. Yeah. So nirvana is peace, right? That's kind of, that means that if you contemplate emptiness well, according to the third seal of Buddhist philosophy, you get rid of the second one, right? The contaminated aspect. And then you actually have achieved this kind of peace of nirvana, right? Because there's no grasping to a strong I. If there's no grasping to a strong I, there's no anger or excessive desire or jealousy or pride or fear or anxiety or depression, right? So that's kind of, eventually it will bring you a kind of real peace of mind all the way up to nirvana, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's the first verse of the text. Yeah. So maybe I was thinking, just for auspiciousness today, just read from the Tibetan, the first verse. Yeah, those who received the Lung also from His Holiness Dalai Lama on a few occasions. Yeah. Yeah. So people can hear that or not? Yeah. I mean, they are on different channels.
Okay, yeah. Geshe, now we're all on the same channel. So
okay, yeah. Okay, so just the first verse for auspiciousness. Okay, yeah. Gyalde pungbo dagena gyewa jigba chen de gyur. Gyalde pungbo namle shing pungbo tseni meba gyur. Yeah, so that's the first verse. Maybe. Yeah, we combine later with other verses, but just for auspiciousness. Yeah, so that's the first verse, and you can read in Spanish. I think you have the verse right. You have the translation. Yeah. So, yeah.
Para traer auspiciosidad para este primer día, que se le ha leído la primera estrofa en tibetano, la cual dice: si los agregados fueran el yo, este tendría surgimiento y destrucción. Si el yo fuera distinto de los agregados, no tendría las características de los agregados.
Yeah, because the first verse talks about if the self were the aggregates, yeah, it would arise and ceasing as the properties. It would be the same as the body, right? And the body, the I, appears very concrete from its own side. It doesn't have the same properties as the body, right? Yeah.
Entonces aquí lo que está diciendo al principio, dice: si los agregados fueran el yo, este tendría surgimiento y destrucción. Y entonces este yo, lo que sucede es que aparece de una forma muy concreta, aparece de una forma muy sólida. Entonces, si fuera igual al cuerpo, tendría los mismos aspectos del cuerpo.
Yeah, and then if it was different, it would be completely different. Yeah, there's the things we talked about. It cannot be one, and it cannot be different from the aggregates. Yeah, so next time we go into more detail, but that's a little bit what we talked about. Yeah.
Y si el yo existiese de forma totalmente, inherentemente distinto al cuerpo, entonces no tendría ninguna relación al cuerpo, no tendría aspectos del cuerpo, por ejemplo, ¿no? Por lo tanto, el yo no puede ser ni uno ni diferente al cuerpo. Y en la próxima clase entraremos más en detalle sobre este tema.
Yeah, so that first verse talks about one with and different from reasoning, right? As we just discussed. Yeah.
Que el tema principal de esta primera estrofa es esta línea de razonamiento, que este silogismo que dice que todo tiene que existir o bien igual o diferente a otra cosa.
Yeah, but more next week.
Pero hablaremos más sobre esto la próxima semana.
Because time, right?
Sorry?
It's time.
Yep, it's time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah.
¿Hemos
Dinner.
acabado hoy? Yo creo que estamos en la hora de la cena ya.
Yeah, 9 o'clock dinner time. Yeah. Okay, so if there's any questions, now you can ask, otherwise we can deal with it next week.
Si tenéis alguna pregunta ahora, si podéis hacer algunas preguntas, y si no, podemos también, podéis hacer preguntas también la semana que viene. Yo tengo una pregunta en el chat de Bea. Vale. Gisela, there's one question. I'll just read it in Spanish and then I'll read it in English. La pregunta de Bea dice: no he comprendido del todo qué es la entidad de los fenómenos y la persona. ¿Podría hablar un poco más sobre esto, por favor? Bea says, Geshe-la, I didn't quite understand what inherent existence of phenomena and the person would mean, like the entity, this inherent entity of the person and phenomenon means. Could you explain a bit more about it, please?
Yeah, we come to that more later on, right? But that means that an inherent I means we grasp to an I that seems to exist from its own side without dependence, right? So from its own side without dependence, that's what we call inherent existence. It appears in that way, but actually when we examine, we see it cannot exist in that way by this reasoning of one and different.
Esto en realidad vamos a ir viéndolo más a lo largo del curso, ¿no? En las distintas clases que vamos a ir dando. Pero en resumen, cuando hablamos de esta entidad del yo y los fenómenos que existen inherentemente, estamos hablando de un yo o de los fenómenos que existen porque existen por sí mismos, que existen de forma independiente, sin depender en nada más. Y los fenómenos y la persona aparecen, aparentemente tienen este tipo de existencia, este tipo de entidad, pero en realidad cuando examinamos tanto los fenómenos como la persona nos damos cuenta de que en realidad no existen de esta forma y nos podemos dar cuenta a través de este razonamiento de siendo uno o distinto a.
Because the I is referring to the person, right? I am like this, or I need that, or how dare a person say this to me, right? That's relating with an I of a person. In a similar way, and we see that person to exist from its own side when somebody criticizes us, for example, you know, how dare this person say this to me? I am not like this. Yeah, so this strong I that comes, and that I seems to appear in a kind of way to exist from its own side without dependence, and that's what we call inherent, right? Inherent meaning without dependence. Yeah, and then based on that we say my book, or my computer, or my job, or my this, or my that, and then also we grasp to other phenomena as existing also very solid out there all by themselves, right? So that's the grasping of phenomena, or an inherent aspect of phenomena without dependence. Yeah.
Entonces, cuando hablamos de este yo, de la entidad, del este yo, nos estamos refiriendo a la persona, ¿no? El yo está relacionado con la persona. Por ejemplo, yo soy así, yo soy de aquella forma, yo necesito esto. ¿Cómo puede esa persona hablarme a mí así, ¿no? Por ejemplo, cuando una persona nos critica. Cuando una persona nos critica, decimos, yo no soy así. Y una idea, una noción de un yo aparece de una forma muy sólida. La forma en la que aparece es sin depender, o sea, independiente. Un yo que existe de forma independiente. Y este yo independiente es lo que nos referimos cuando hablamos de una existencia inherente, de una entidad inherente, un yo que existe de forma independiente. Y en base a ese yo, entonces también concebimos mi libro, por ejemplo, o mi ordenador, también de esta forma independiente, y otros fenómenos de la misma forma, existiendo de forma independiente. Y eso es lo que quiere decir que existan inherentemente, esta entidad que existe inherentemente.
So inherent, yeah, it was the self of the person or phenomena. Inherent means without dependence, very solid, existing from its own side. That's how things appear. But if you examine, things are related with each other, things are connected, things are dependent upon each other. So we see this inherent aspect appears, but if you examine, it actually doesn't exist in that way.
Cuando hablamos de existencia inherente tanto de la persona como de los fenómenos, ¿no? Y cuando estamos hablando de esta existencia inherente, de una entidad inherente que tienen las personas y los fenómenos, o cómo aparecen, aparentemente existen inherentemente, esto se está refiriendo a un tipo de existencia independiente, sólida, existiendo por sí misma. Pero si en realidad investigamos estos fenómenos o investigamos a la persona, vemos que en realidad estos fenómenos o la persona están relacionadas con otras cosas, están conectadas con otras cosas, ¿no? Aunque aparecen, aunque las percibimos existiendo de esa manera, en realidad no existen de esa manera en la que las percibimos.
But we're going to talk about much more in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Pero en las próximas semanas vamos a hablar más sobre este tema. I think... Sí.
Hay una pregunta más, Ana, un momentito.
Vale. Apparently there's one more question.
Okay.
Hola, Gisela. La cuestión es acerca de la investigación del yo en el proceso de conciencia momento a momento, porque me da inmediatamente la sensación que me ha venido es de que aparece un yo, pero que aparece en ese momento y que como si fuese totalmente independiente de ese yo en el momento anterior. Entonces, aquí no tengo muy claro cuál sería el proceso de búsqueda y el resultado que se tiene que esperar.
Gracias, Ana. Geshe, so the question would be, when you talked about investigating the I in relation to each individual moment of consciousness to check whether the I is in any of the instance of the consciousness, what came up to my mind was that I wasn't sure how to do that analysis, and what came up to my mind is that, oh, an I exists independently, like in this moment, which is independent from the previous moment of consciousness. So I'm not sure how I should do this analysis and to what type of result am I looking for?
Yeah. So you try to see that it's not one with all those moments, right? Because it appears the I appears very solid without individual moments or without individual parts, right? So you see that the consciousness have different moments, and there is no I within all those moments. Yeah, that means that the I is the same as all those moments, right? That's one way to look at it. So you see, it's not one with these moments. It's not one with consciousness. Yeah, and then you try to see, okay, if it's not one, then it should be different. There's no other possibility. Is it really inherently different, like a dog and a cat? You know, but we say my feeling, my thought, my perception. Yeah, so it's not really completely inherent different. So we see this I that appears very solid from its own side is not one with consciousness because it doesn't have all these moments, and it's also not different. So actually you cannot find it in relation with consciousness.
Primero tendríamos que ver, por ejemplo, si este yo es uno con la conciencia, es uno con cada momento de la conciencia, ¿no? En realidad el yo no puede ser, la persona no puede ser igual a cada momento de conciencia, porque la forma en la que percibimos el yo es un yo como existiendo de forma muy sólida, sin momentos individuales, sin partes, ¿no? Un yo unitario, un yo muy sólido. Pero en realidad la conciencia está formada por distintos momentos, por distintos instantes, y el yo no está en cada uno, no es ninguno de esos instantes en sí mismo. Por lo tanto, el yo no puede ser lo mismo que cada instante de la conciencia. Entonces, el yo no puede ser uno o igual a la conciencia, ¿no? Pero si no es uno con la conciencia, puesto que no es ninguna de las partes de la conciencia, entonces sería diferente a la conciencia. ¿Es entonces el yo y la conciencia existiendo inherentemente separados, como existen, por ejemplo, el perro y el gato, que están totalmente desconectados, están totalmente no relacionados? Y si es así, entonces, ¿qué sucede cuando yo digo mi emoción, mi sensación? Yo me siento así, yo tengo este pensamiento, yo tengo esta percepción. Veo que ahí hay una relación entre el yo y la conciencia. Entonces tampoco puedo decir que la conciencia exista de forma inherentemente distinta, que el yo exista inherentemente distinto a la conciencia. Por tanto, veo que el yo, porque yo lo percibo como algo muy sólido, no existe como siendo igual a la conciencia, puesto que no es cada uno de los instantes individuales de la conciencia, ni tampoco inherentemente distinto a la conciencia.
Yeah, but we're going to do that more. Just the introduction, right? Yeah, we're gonna use this similar kind of reasoning over the coming weeks, and then you get more familiar with it. Yeah.
Pero esto lo vamos también a estar viendo, lo vamos a estudiar más en detalle también en las siguientes semanas. ¿Sí? Hoy he hecho una mera introducción al tema.
Yeah, that's it for the questions, I think.
Sí, yo creo. ¿Se han terminado las preguntas?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then dinner time. Yeah, and then yeah, see you next week. And yeah. Buenas noches.
Nos gustaría un segundito hablar de un grupo de debate. If it's possible, just few seconds to talk about the study group.
Yeah, sure.
Just a moment. Fernando, ya se abre. Ana, ¿le traduces a Fernando?
Vale, deciros que vamos a hacer un grupo de debate o de estudio con los fines, o sea, las clases de Geshe. Bueno, antes de nada, darle muchísimas gracias por las clases. Y serán los mismos jueves a las 6. Los que estéis interesados, estaros atentos al correo porque mandaremos un enlace para que podáis entrar o ya veremos, pero estar un poco pendientes al correo durante mañana y pasado y así podréis entrar. Pues solo era eso.
First of all, I want to express my gratitude to Geshe and also inform everyone that we're going to start a study group. So it will be on Thursdays at 6 p.m. So all of you who are interested, please keep an eye on your email because either this evening or tomorrow in the next couple of days, we will send an email with the information. And yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, then discuss a little bit. That helps, right, to clarify things and to keep things in memory. So yeah, very good. Yeah, it helps a lot. Thank you.
Esto está súper bien, muchas gracias porque estos grupos de estudio y de debate ayudan mucho a clarificar el tema y a memorizar, a mantenerlo en la mente. Así que muchas gracias.
Yeah. All right, then I should say enjoy your dinner and buenas noches. Yeah.
Que disfrutéis de la cena y buenas noches.
Buenas noches, Geshe.
Buenas noches.
So maybe we dedicate.
Thank you so much, Geshe.
Dedicate.
Geshe la va a dedicar.
Dedicate bodhicittas, right? Yeah, just dedicate for generation bodhicitta for self all sentient beings and realizing emptiness as soon as possible.
Vamos a dedicar para generar la bodhicitta para nuestro propio beneficio y el beneficio de los seres y también generar la visión de la vacuidad lo antes posible.
Yo semjo rinpoche magye pana ngegyu Jeba nyamba meba yang gone gonda belwa sho toni tawa rinpoche magye pana ngegyu Jeba nyamba meba yang gone gonda belwa sho. Okay, thank you so much. See you next time. Same place, same channel. Yeah.